Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I'm here to speak to you today as Chair of the Strategic Board of GESUP, the Joint Emergency Services Interoperability Programme, and I'm going to lead you through that. A couple of things first. I'm worried about the reference to the peloton. I'm not sure if we all have to be on drugs to do this, but but it might help on occasions. And also, I was interested, Michael pointed out the 26 nations there. I mean, just in England, this is very much an emergency services programme at the moment, very aware of the local resilience forum context as well. But we're talking over 100 autonomous organisations there across the police, fire and ambulance services, trusts, authorities, PCCs and whatever else is in the mix at the moment, and trying to get them all together and moving in the same direction together can cause its own challenges. Now, GESUP is a government funded through the Home Office and OSCT, Office of Security and Counter-Terrorism, but emergency services led. So although we've got £1.5 million for a couple of years to lead this programme, it is being led by the emergency services to look at issues right from the operational up through the strategic. Now, I'm going to stay at the strategic end because we're a bit of a double act with Joe at the end there, looking at more the very much operational and work-led end. So we've got, for me, it's really looking at the why we're doing this, and what we're trying to do, and what might be the outcome. So why GESUP? I mean, this sort of list you can add and add to. Lockerbie could have been added to this, Clapham Rail crash could have been added to this, King's Cross fire, just past the 25th anniversary of that, could be added to this list. And the recommendations often come up very similar. You'll hear a lot today about the importance of working together and knowing each other and training together and understanding what's ahead of you. But where we're concentrating on GESUP is major or complex incidents. So major incidents, obviously your 7.7s or Lockerbies or Bunsfield or anything like that, but also complex incidents. There are incidents that might only involve a few resources from each of the services, but they will be complex and difficult to deal with. Through this as well, yeah, I'm going to go back, and I'd like you to keep this in your mind as you're thinking about this. Some of the sort of recommendations, particularly from Lady Justice Hallett, who said any major incident, the speed at which order is brought to bear is integral to effective management. So the bit we're really talking about is that first hour. Now, having been to a number of incidents in my operational life, including the Paddington Rail crash and Bunsfield and St Mary's Axe bombings and those sorts of things, that first hour can be absolute chaos for emergency services. First hour, when you first turn up, when you're trying to gather the information, when you're trying to find out what's actually happened, who's involved, what resources you need, how you might tackle a problem, can be absolute chaos. Not only is that chaos there, you then could well end up in an inquiry, as 7.7, with a barrister applying 20/20 hindsight to 50/50 decisions. So saying, Mr. Wilsh, you'd been there for 15 minutes and 11 seconds, you made this decision. Why did you make that decision? Why didn't you make a different decision? Why didn't you remember the manual? Why didn't you go this route? What was it about that particular moment in time that made you make that decision? So it's that first hour we're really concentrating on. Now, if we can bring that, in my mind, and I'm a fairly simplistic person, if we can bring that last hour of chaos down to 45 minutes or 30 minutes before we have that common picture, I think we would have succeeded. Often common recommendations, common learning that come out a lot of these inquiries. So again, Lady Justice Hallett said, individual emergency responders encountered delay and difficulties in trying to ascertain what the nature of the incidents were or what resources were required, and there were significant differences in the way in which emergency responders endeavoured to address common issues. The evidence demonstrates, therefore, a need for the review of the extent and scope of interagency training. Such training is vital in helping to reduce confusion and in fostering a better understanding of the emergency services' respective roles. Now, I suppose to a lot of people, and the people on the street, that might be a bit confusing. You would have thought we'd all know what our role is and what we should be doing. And in broad sense, we do. But when it comes to saving life, now, if there's a fire to be put out, it's very much my service. But if you're going to save life, it's very much the three services involved. Lady Justice Hallett goes on to say, at gold and silver levels, the understanding and training's very good. However, the evidence also indicated that there was considerable less interagency training available for those frontline members of the emergency services tasked with responding to the initial chaos, carnage and confusion of a major incident. The use of complex acronyms and unnecessary jargon may also confuse and impede communication. It tends to undermine a proper understanding of the roles and intentions of members and other emergency services. We actually launched this programme. Was it just last week? Was it last week? 2 weeks ago, I can't remember. Time flies. Well, I managed to speak for 2 minutes in acronyms from the fire service point of view. I started to talk about, we had major flood in the southwest, so we had an SHA set up with ELS, and we had a number of HVPs with SMAs. We had NRAT involved, and we might get NSATs, talking to the LRF, and it went on. And fire service people knew. What I was saying is we had a lot of big pumps storing up somewhere, are going to go on and pump water with some advisors next to them. That's what I was really saying. But I went on, and I think it brought home to people why we don't understand. If we go on to Derek Bird, communications between services was poor and overloaded on a single channel. Breivik, the ability to acknowledge risk and learn from exercise has not been sufficient. Plus the ability to coordinate and interact has been deficient. And then I know you heard from Chris Allison this morning, but the Olympic Safety and Security Assessment, all involved considered enhanced information sharing about risks, helped in building trust, informing consistent planning, and helped decision making. So a bit of communication, a bit of discussion, a bit of common language, a bit of understanding what each of us is trying to achieve. So what's the aim of Jessup? There you can read for yourself. I'm trained and exercised. Now we know at the strategic coordination group level, goal type level, it works pretty well because we're a small group of individuals that know each other fairly well. We meet at the LRF, we exercise and train together, and often when we come together we know each other, we know our capabilities, our experience, and we work well. Works fairly well at the silver level. Again, there's a bit of understanding, a bit of knowledge. We sometimes in the fire service get a bit confused that police silver's 10 miles away at a police station and ours is actually at the incident, but we managed to cope with that. And Pitt acknowledged after floodings a crucial element of success was that gold and silver attendees knew each other. Our difficulty comes at that very front line, bronze level initial. Again, Michael talked about different shifts, different people, different patterns of work. It's the person in charge of the first fire engine who meets the first police constable along with the first paramedic that starts making that initial assessment and the initial decision making. Do they do that together? Do they understand about interoperability? They set the foundation of which everything is built on top, and that's where we're concentrating a lot of our work. And what we do understand is that although we want to be interoperable, we're not interchangeable. We each have different roles and different things to do. So we want to work clearly together, but don't want to do each other's job. Again, so what is interoperability? We started off by, often people say, what's interoperability? For many years, the discussion has been about airwave radios. Interoperability is all about communications. It's much more than that. Communication is an important part, but working together is much more important than that. So we've all agreed, and when I say we've agreed, the emergency services, on these definitions, which is a step in the right direction. We start agreeing on these things. Now, we work together, interoperably, every day of the week. Just yesterday in Hertfordshire, between 2 o'clock in the morning and 10 o'clock, we had 3 major collisions on the M1, which closed the motorway twice. 2 people died, 8 other people were taken to hospital with serious injuries. Each accident needed people cut out, needed the ambulance, highways agency, police to work together, and it worked perfectly well from the emergency response point of view. So we know we're doing interoperability every day of the week. Somewhere in the country at this moment, the 3 services will be working together without any problem. So we're very much talking about the major and complex incidents. And we also know that to resolve those, particularly in the major incidents, it's much more than the emergency services. As Rob said, I now chair the Hertfordshire Local Resilience Forum, so I very much understand that resolving an incident long term is much more than just the emergency services. And as I say, our concentration at the moment is that first hour and the emergency response. Yeah. they've done it to me as well. Slides are missing, but there should be a Olympic legacy in there. But let's see this. No clear understanding. Let's stay with that. Right. What's going to be different? Very much about what's going to be different is shared ethos towards emergency response. What I mean by that is that we have different levels, appetite for risk, different understanding of what we might respond to, whether it's flooding, whether it's a house fire, whether it's a bombing. So we understand that initial emergency response. I think from the Olympics, as much as anything else, and from your own experience, not only joint guidance, but joint training and exercising is particularly important. But we do understand at that very front line, particularly if there's any colleagues from the ambulance service, being able to free up paramedics to go to exercises is particularly difficult given the call on your time. Not only the exercising, but also the testing of that exercising. We've done some very good work recently over CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear incidents, and also marauding terrorism. That's very much about testing and speccing what you might do as three services together, and we're trying to take that forward. So a control room interoperability and the golden hour. Again, we've all got separate control rooms, how they talk to each other, how they manage the response and manage your services all joined together. Improve situational awareness and mobilising procedures. So again, we're talking about that very first initial response of the branch commanders, understanding what's in front of you, making some order of that chaos as quickly as you possibly can, so you've got a common understanding, and if at all possible, some common decision making. And agree protocols to agree those local plans. Clear understanding of each other's role and responsibilities. Again, there's a very brief example. It's another incident in Hertfordshire that's happened recently, just by Junction 8 of the M1. We've had 5,000 tonnes of wood ready for recycling that's been burning for a few weeks. It's just not worth putting it out because of the pollution, etc. But a couple times, the local motorways and roads have been closed without us knowing. And that decision's been made by a different agency without coming together as a common agency, because they thought the wind might have changed direction or something might change, so they thought they'd close the roads. So even locally, we need to put in that common situational awareness, that common decision making, to make sure that we don't disrupt the economy in the southeast yet again for another 5 hours, that we understand what the implications of closing a motorway might be, and whether there's a true need to do that. So that's very much about common language, less bureaucracy, and certainly a lot of information sharing. Agreed decision models for decision making. Again, this might come as a surprise to some of you not in emergency services, but we have different models for making decisions on the incident ground. Joe will go into this a bit more, but we've reached some agreement on that already, and also mechanisms to share the lessons that are learnt. I actually prefer to share the lessons that are identified, because a lesson's not learned until we actually do something about it. So once we can identify the lessons and then do something about it to make sure we learn from those incidents. There's the Olympic one, excellent. The National Olympic Control Centre, the NOC. And again, then those of you involved in the Olympics, there was NOCs and LOCs and JOCs and all sorts of things going on. We had a whole lexicon of acronyms for the Olympics, which was fantastic. But that central one in particular worked particularly well, and I'm sure you heard about that from Chris Allison this morning. We delivered an on-sea commander awareness package before the Olympics. Again, that was agreed across those 100+ organisations before it was then delivered as training to all our commanders prior to the Olympics, which was a real plus for all of us. That common agreement, and I agree with Michael, that the time seems to be right to move this forward. Testing and exercising. Again, if any of you had an Olympic venue in your area or even close to one, you would know how much testing and exercising went on, and it was really good. Plus the assurance that went on the back of that. Okay, I know my own service, we must have been assured 5 times by different agencies, whether it was the Chief Fire and Rescue Advisor, or whether it was HMIC, or whether it was the local DCLG, or there was all sorts of people looking at us, but it was great assurance. And again, that sharing of threats of intelligence really worked well. So how are we organising ourselves? I think Michael did say that the buy-in from, we often talk about joined up and being joined up at local government, and many of us have said we'd like you to be joined up at national government first, and that would quite help the rest of us. So the people here sitting around, I reported back to the ministerial board along with Craig Denholm and Philip Gormley, and Joe was there. So across the table from me, we had Theresa May, Francis Maud, James Brokenshire, Dan Poulter from the Department of Health, Brandon Lewis, who's the Fire Minister, and Damien Green. So all sitting together as a group of ministers, cross-department, supporting this programme and wanting to know what's going on. And I think that government support is absolutely fantastic. Let's say I report along with other members, and you can see who else attends. The Strategic Board meeting quarterly I chair. Again, we have government officials from all those departments, so Department of Health and Home Office and OSCT and DCLG and others, to make sure we get that cross-government buy-in. Chief Officers, Craig Denholm, who's the Senior Responsible Officer, he's the Deputy Chief Constable of Surrey, Magistrates Inspector and others. So again, very much across government, across organisation. Programme Board meets monthly, again, Craig Denholm. Joe, who you'll hear from in a second, plus senior leads from the 3 services and the senior users. And Joe will go much more into how the team set up and are starting to work together. And on that board as well, they're meeting monthly with government representatives working together to ensure, although it's emergency services led, we have government buy-in and we're working hard together to make this work. Probably don't want questions now, do you, Rob? You've got them later.
Panel at the end, if that's okay. Thank you
very
much indeed.
Thank you.